what I think, the way I see it is that we are seeing something that is actually not new in terms of the political dynamic, and that is a top-bottom alliance against the middle. And so I was, again, a lot of the criticism. It's hard to. It is such a big topic. It's hard to know where to start. So forgive me, but a lot of the criticism of, say, white nationalism and so on. And I don't identify as a white nationalist, just to let that be known. But anyway, a lot of the criticism of white nationalism or even identitarianism or whatever is that, oh, look, you're not representing white people. Actually, tons of white people hate you. And, what's the problem? Look at all these rich white people. They're benefiting from the system. That is true. There are many people who benefit from the system. There are many white people who are being degraded by the system, but are still kind of alive. They're still hanging on, kind of thing. And the fact is, so we need to understand what the dynamic is. We aren't representing white people in the same way that, say, Al Sharpton represents the blacks or something like that. We are actually, so many of our enemies are white. Put aside the Jewish question, which is a difficult one, but so many of the people, none of this would be happening if tons of white people were fully on board with it. Ideologically and materially and so on. So we attack whites. We have a white problem. There's no question. And what's happening is that there is a top-bottom alliance where upper-level whites who are benefiting from the system or think they could benefit from it are aligning themselves with people of color, with immigrants, even with the global South, against the white middle class and the white working class. And so while the white middle class is still kind of limping along, the white working class is just being decimated. I mean, it's absolutely sad.
Joining me now, Michael Moore, an Academy Award-winning documentary filmmaker whose latest film, Fahrenheit 11/9, is now available on DVD on demand and is the #1 documentary film on iTunes. Michael, welcome. You and I share a deep interest in the economic well-being of Americans. They were sold a bill of goods in that tax plan.
Right.
And we have not seen any evidence of gain from the president, and we careen from one thing to a next, and then in 24 hours we may see a government shutdown.
Right. The gain has been for that top 0.1%. They've done very well. But I wonder how they've been feeling the last 5 to 11 days. When will they decide he's got to go? That will be the interesting moment, I think.
That group has done well for a long time.
They've done even better now, historically better.
Yeah.
All the Republicans in that photo that you showed, standing there on the steps with him a year ago today, all looking so slap happy and all. Remember, it's not just Trump. All of the Republicans, all of them, nobody has had the courage to stand up and say this is wrong. This is un-American. This hurts this country. This tax cut, in a sense, an act of terror, because it's going to make the people who are already struggling to get by that much harder to get by. And what are they going to do? What are they going to do? And to alleviate their pain, how many more of those opioid drugs are they going to need? What will happen with their children in their inadequate schools? The air that they're breathing, the climate change that they say they don't believe in, all of that.
You know very clearly that the opioid epidemic is a byproduct. It was bad stuff from pharmaceuticals and it was bad stuff from pain practitioners, but it's an economic outcome.
Yes, and it also kills people. Our healthcare system should not be in the hands of people whose goal is to make a profit. That's their job. In fact, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to make as big a profit as possible. So that's why our health insurance isn't what it actually should be. It's why the pharmaceutical companies control all of this. But I was just watching the stuff with Madison. I was in the green room back there, and I think maybe this is the first time I've actually been frightened for the country. Frightened, really.
The early 1900s, white supremacist society, they were more degenerate than they are now. So they weren't really trying to network and do legitimate business with each other. In the early 1900s, boy, do you know how scandalous white people were back then? They were doing nothing but crimes. because you had a flood of immigrants coming in, so all of them were battling each other. White ethnic groups, there was all types of white ethnic tension all around the country. The only people who were really on code at the time were black people. This is why we can get on code and do business with each other and network. Everybody was getting that Madam C.J. Walker plug in black society. In white society, they were cutting each other's fucking throats. Remember the Gangs of New York movie? That was around it took place around that time frame.
Anything in your pockets tonight?
Oh, I ain't started working yet.
What about that locket that I gave you? Enough of this heathen music! This is a night for Americans!
That's the building of our country right there, Mr. Cutting. Americans are borning.
I don't see no Americans. I see trespassers.
His name's Amsterdam. The appearance of the law must be upheld, especially while it's being broken.
A man who will fight for freedom.
There's more of us coming off these ships every day. 15,000 Irish a week.
A man who will kill for power.
Mulberry Street and Worth. Cross and Orange and Little Water. Each of the 5 points is a finger. When I close my hand, it becomes a fist.
In white society, they were cutting each other's fucking throats. Remember the Gangs of New York movie? That was around it took place around that time frame. They would beat each other in the fucking brains. So they couldn't trust each other to have that type of network in the early 1900s. They were too cutthroat with each other. The mafia, all them people were coming into prominence. See, at that time, the early 1900s, you only had like a handful of rich people. There was no middle class. This is why the white supremacists, they were so goddamn scandalous. There was no middle class. The middle class in this country started really in the 1940s. Before, there was no goddamn middle class. Either you were a white person, you were rich, or you were poor. There was no middle class. You were rich or struggling, for the most part. You were rich or you were working class, but there was no real middle class. You know? You had a handful of white families running everything. The Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Rothschilds. You had a handful of white families really hoarding all the wealth. You understand? So they don't like to show you that part of the game. They don't like to give you that part of the game, guys. So this is why it's very important. Yeah, the Vanderbilt is very important for us to put the game out there. It's very important for us to tell the story and tell the history.